Before you can understand what these farmers built, you need to understand what they were fighting. The Sahara Desert covers 9.2 million square kilometers, nearly the size of the entire United States. It accounts for almost 1/3 of the African continent, and it is not staying where it is. Compared to the early 20th century, the Sahara has expanded by between 10 and 20%. Every year, the desert edge moves further south, swallowing farmland, grassland, and villages that have existed for centuries. South of the Sahara lies the Sahel, a semi-arid belt stretching across more than 20 African countries. Hundreds of millions of people live here. They depend directly on the land for food, water, and income, and the land is failing them. Here is the paradox that took scientists decades to fully understand. The Sahel is not completely without rain. Every year, the region experiences short but intense rainy seasons. Water does fall from the sky. The problem is what happens when it hits the ground. Decades of overgrazing, deforestation, and agricultural pressure have destroyed the soil structure. The surface has hardened into a dense, water-repellent crust. When rain arrives, and it arrives violently, in short, powerful bursts, it does not soak in. It runs off. It picks up topsoil as it goes, carves channels through the land, causes flash floods, and disappears within hours. The result is a vicious cycle that feeds itself. Drought destroys the soil. Rain causes erosion instead of restoration. The land loses more of its ability to retain water with every passing season. Crops fail. Communities abandon the land. The desert advances. Desertification is not simply a climate problem. It is the complete collapse of a water and soil system that took thousands of years to build and can collapse in a single generation. Why billion-dollar tree planting failed? For decades, the world's response to this crisis was trees. It seemed logical. The Sahel had lost its vegetation cover. Plant trees, restore the cover, stop the desert. Billions of dollars in international aid funded massive tree planting campaigns across the region. Billions of saplings were transported into the Sahel and planted by the millions. More than 80 to 90% of them died. Not because the people planting them did not care, not because the funding ran out. They died because the programs started at the wrong point entirely. Young trees were planted into soil that had already lost everything: its structure, its ability to retain moisture, its microbial life. When rain arrived, the water ran off too fast for roots to absorb it. When the sun returned, surface temperatures spiked, and whatever moisture remained evaporated within hours. The seedlings had no foundation to survive in. Planting trees in dead soil is like installing a sophisticated machine on a collapsed foundation. The machine cannot run because the structure beneath it cannot support it. The real problem in the Sahel was never a shortage of trees. It was the land's lost ability to sustain life in any form. And no amount of tree planting could fix that until the soil itself was restored first. This realization changed everything. The Great Green Wall, a different kind of solution. In 2007, the African Union launched one of the most ambitious environmental projects in human history, the Great Green Wall. It stretches approximately 8,000 kilometers across the Sahel belt, from the Atlantic coast in the west to the Red Sea in the east, involving more than 20 countries. But it is not what most people picture when they hear the name. It is not a wall of trees. It is not a single continuous structure of any kind. The Great Green Wall is a mosaic, a network of ecosystem restoration where each region applies different techniques based on local soil conditions, water availability, and the livelihoods of the people who live there. Some areas use trees, some use grass, some use stone, some use sand. All of them start with the same foundation, restoring the way water moves through the soil before anything else. The Great Green Wall does not try to force the desert to become green. It reshapes how water, land, and people interact, and then allows life to return on its own. At the center of this approach is a technique so simple that outsiders consistently underestimate it. A hand-dug hole shaped like a crescent moon, about the size of a dining table.
The half-moon pit, how a hole changes everything. The half-moon pit was not invented by scientists. It was not designed in a laboratory or funded by an international development agency. It was developed by farmers in the Sahel who understood their land better than anyone else and had been quietly refining this technique for generations. The shape is not accidental. Water in the Sahel does not fall gently. It arrives in short, violent bursts and rushes down slope at high speed. A straight trench would simply channel this water away, but a curved crescent shape intercepts the flow from multiple angles simultaneously, forcing water to slow, spread outward, and settle into the soil gradually rather than rushing past. The open side of the crescent faces uphill, catching incoming water. The curved back wall on the lower side holds it in place. The shape works with gravity and with the natural direction of runoff, which is exactly why it succeeds where other structures have failed for decades. The construction process follows a clear technical sequence. First, farmers identify the contour lines of the slope using nothing more than ropes, wooden stakes, and simple hand tools. The pits must be positioned perpendicular to the direction of runoff to intercept the maximum volume of water during heavy rain. Each pit measures approximately 4 to 6 meters in diameter and only 20 to 40 centimeters deep. A small earthen berm rises 25 to 50 centimeters along the curved outer edge, acting as the retaining wall that keeps captured water from escaping before it can infiltrate the soil. The pits are intentionally shallow. The goal is not to store water like a reservoir. The goal is to slow runoff just long enough for it to penetrate the hardened surface crust and reach the soil layers below. Hold the water for 2 hours instead of 2 minutes, and the entire equation changes. The pits are spaced roughly 8 to 15 meters apart and aligned in parallel rows along the contour of the slope. Viewed from above, they form a stepped hydraulic system, a series of catching basins that slow and distribute rainfall across an entire hillside rather than allowing it to concentrate into destructive channels. One person with a hoe and a shovel can complete a single pit in approximately 1 hour. No machinery, no imported materials, no technical expertise beyond what local farmers already possess. What happens after the pits are dug? The pit itself is only the beginning. Once the water begins infiltrating through the crescent basin, farmers spread seeds of native drought-resistant grasses inside the pits, species like andropogon and centris that have evolved specifically to survive in Sahel conditions. These grasses develop deep fibrous root systems that penetrate the soil, breaking up the hardened layers, creating pathways for water to move deeper and anchoring the soil particles so that erosion slows dramatically. As the grasses establish themselves, they begin trapping organic matter, dead leaves, dust particles, fine sediment carried by rain. This organic matter accumulates inside the pit, building the first layer of restored soil. Microorganisms return, earthworms return. The biological community that makes soil function begins to rebuild itself from nothing. This process takes 2 to 5 years to become clearly visible, but when it does, the transformation is dramatic. What starts as isolated patches of grass gradually expands into continuous ground cover. Studies in Niger, Burkina Faso, and Senegal show that restored areas can achieve 40 to 60% vegetation cover, compared to near zero before the pits were dug. Improved soil moisture and structure then allows shrubs and native trees to regenerate naturally without being planted, reconnecting fragmented habitats and creating the conditions for a functioning ecosystem to return. Insects come back, then small animals, then grazing herds, then the farmers who left. The numbers that change the argument. The scale of what has been achieved with this technique is difficult to comprehend. Field projects in Niger and Burkina Faso show that land restored with half-moon pits increases millet and maize yields by between 50 and 100% compared to unrestored land nearby. Thousands of hectares that had been completely abandoned, land that families had walked away from because it could no longer produce food, have been brought back into production. This directly translates into food security for communities that were facing hunger. It translates into household income from crops that can be sold. It translates into seasonal employment for young people who would otherwise leave for cities, digging, maintaining, and expanding the pit systems year after year. And the cost of all this restoration is almost nothing compared to every other method that has been tried. No imported equipment, no specialist contractors, no complex supply chains, just hoes, shovels, ropes, seeds, and the labor of communities who understand exactly what their land needs.
Sand dams, capturing water underground. The half-moon pit addresses the surface, but the Great Green Wall also attacks the water problem from beneath the ground. In many parts of the Sahel, seasonal rivers run for only a few weeks each year during the rainy season. For the remaining 10 or 11 months, those riverbeds sit dry. Communities that depend on those rivers have no surface water access for the majority of the year. The sand dam solves this with a technique that is elegant in its simplicity. A low wall of concrete or stone is built across the seasonal riverbed. When the rains arrive and the river runs, it carries enormous quantities of sand downstream. That sand accumulates behind the dam wall, and within the accumulated sand, water is trapped and held. The stored water does not evaporate because it is underground, protected by the sand layer above it. Unlike open reservoirs where up to 90% of water can be lost to evaporation, a sand dam loses almost nothing. The water remains accessible year-round through shallow wells dug into the accumulated sand deposit on the upstream side of the dam. Communities using sand dams can triple their local water availability. They can maintain small-scale irrigation through the dry season. They can water livestock without traveling long distances. And because the sand dam slows the velocity of flash floods, it also dramatically reduces downstream erosion, protecting both farmland and the dam structure itself. More than 1,000 sand dams have been built in Kenya alone, with major programs running in Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Zimbabwe. Field studies consistently show that communities with sand dams report significant increases in agricultural output and reduced seasonal water stress. Changes that compound over years as the sand accumulation grows and water storage capacity increases. Stone lines, rebuilding soil from the surface. Alongside the half-moon pit and the sand dam, the Great Green Wall employs a third foundational technique, the contour stone line. The method is straightforward. Farmers collect loose stones from nearby land and arrange them in rows running across the slope, following the natural contour lines of the terrain. The stone rows are typically 15 to 25 centimeters high and spaced several meters apart across the hillside. When rain arrives and water begins running down slope, it hits the first stone line and slows. Sediment and organic matter suspended in the runoff settle out of the water and accumulate behind the stones. The water that continues downslope hits the next stone line, slows again, loses more sediment, and infiltrates more deeply. Over time, seasons, then years, fine fertile soil builds up behind each stone line. The slope gradually develops horizontal terraces of reconstructed topsoil where none existed before. Crops and grasses can now establish themselves in soil that was previously too degraded and too thin to support any vegetation.
Stone lines have been documented increasing crop yields by between 30 and 80% in Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, and Ethiopia. They require nothing beyond local stone and the labor to place it. They are durable. A well-built stone line can remain effective for decades without any maintenance, and they are visible from the air, allowing researchers to track the expansion of restored land across entire landscapes from satellite imagery. The human story behind the Green Wall. None of this happens without people. The Great Green Wall is not a government project that communities watch from the outside. It is built by the people who live inside it. Farmers, pastoralists, women's groups, young people who would otherwise have no productive work during the dry season. In Niger, a movement called Farmer Managed Natural Regeneration, FMNR, has encouraged farmers to stop clearing every bush and shrub from their fields and instead selectively manage the natural regrowth that emerges from existing root systems in the soil. Roots that were there for generations, dormant, waiting for the pressure of overgrazing and overclearing to ease. When farmers began protecting and managing this natural regrowth rather than destroying it, trees and shrubs began returning across millions of hectares without a single seedling being planted. By some estimates, more than 5 million hectares of land in Niger alone have been restored through FMNR at almost zero cost, driven entirely by a change in how farmers managed what was already in their soil. The Great Green Wall is at its most powerful not when international organizations fund large projects, but when local communities own the process, adapt the techniques to their specific land, and pass the knowledge to the next generation. What has been achieved and what remains? The numbers from the Great Green Wall are significant and growing. Approximately 18 million hectares of degraded land have been restored across the Sahel since the program began. Millions of trees have regenerated naturally across Niger and Senegal. Water availability has improved in hundreds of communities. Crop yields have increased on land that was previously considered permanently lost. But the scale of the challenge means the work is far from finished. The target set for 2030 is to restore 100 million hectares of currently degraded land, sequester 250 million tons of carbon, and create 10 million jobs across the Sahel region. As of today, the program has achieved approximately 18% of that target. Significant progress, but with the most difficult portion of the work still ahead. The funding required to complete the Great Green Wall is estimated at several $billions. The techniques to do it already exist, proven, scalable, locally owned, and effective under the harshest conditions on Earth. What began with a farmer in the Sahel digging a crescent-shaped hole by hand is now one of the most closely watched environmental programs in the world. Because if it works at the scale being attempted, and the evidence so far says it can, it will not just change Africa. It will rewrite how the world thinks about land restoration, desertification, and what communities can achieve when they are trusted to solve their own problems their own way. That is not a small thing. That is one of the most important environmental stories of the 21st century. And it started with a hole in the ground. If you want to see more of what human determination looks like when it takes on problems the rest of the world has given up on, Quiet Tech Process has you covered. Subscribe and do not miss what is coming next.